Jung Tae-hyun had spent 55 nights sleeping on the sidewalks of Los Angeles, testing which woman would treat him like a person instead of an inconvenience. Imani Grant was the only one who did. A spare key, a couch, 90 days of a truth she never knew was a lie. At her kitchen table, he finally told her everything. His real name, the 4 companies, the marriage his father was arranging, the $11 million he'd refused to touch for 3 months, just to find out if anyone would help a man who had nothing. She didn't say yes, she didn't say no, she said she needed time. That same day, Tae-hyun told his father he wasn't marrying Yuri Song. And his mother asked, out loud, what a family like Imani's could possibly bring them. Since then, a 50-year-old family secret came to light, a founding partner erased from the company's history, and Sang-hoon corrected it publicly, apologizing to the man's grandson and honoring him properly. Days later, Imani found a small ring box in Taehyun's coat pocket by accident, and said nothing, certain the answer was already decided, however long the asking took. Welcome back. If this is your first time here, parts 1 through 6 are everything you need. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what comes next. Now let's get into part 6. Min-soo had drawn considerably more attention than Tae-hyun anticipated. A small business press item that should have stayed contained to trade publications instead picked up traction on a local society blog, the specific kind of outlet that specialized in exactly the story now forming around his family. Korean import dynasty corrects 50-year wrong, and the mystery woman at the center of the family's recent transformation. Woo Jin brought him the printout Monday morning, something wary in his expression. It's not hostile, he said. If anything, it's flattering, but it names you specifically, and it references a woman close to the family, without a name attached yet. That's not going to stay unnamed for long, not with this much attention circling. How long do we have? Days, not weeks, Woo Jin said. Someone's going to find Imani's name eventually. Her employer, her neighborhood, something. I'd rather we get ahead of it than let a stranger with a camera do it for us. Tae-hyun sat with that for a long moment, the specific weight of a problem he hadn't anticipated arriving at exactly the wrong moment. The ring had been sitting in his coat pocket for 9 days, and he'd been waiting for a specific evening, a specific quiet, that suddenly felt considerably harder to guarantee with a story circulating that could turn any public moment between them into something photographed and captioned by strangers. I don't want this to become the story, he said. Whatever happens next between us, I don't want it happening because a blog forced our hand. Then don't let it force your hand, Woo Jin said. Do what you were already planning to do. Just do it somewhere no one's looking, and let the rest of the world find out after, on your terms instead of theirs. That's easier said than managed, with a story already circulating. Most things worth doing are, Woo Jin said. I didn't say it would be simple. I said it was still possible, if you move deliberately instead of reactively. Tae-hyun spent the rest of the morning turning the problem over from every angle he could construct. The specific discipline he'd once applied to shipping manifests and quarterly numbers now redirected toward a considerably more personal calculation. He thought about every location he'd considered over the past 9 days, a rooftop restaurant with a view of the whole city, a private dinner at the house, even, briefly and quickly discarded, some elaborate gesture involving her entire family flown in without her knowledge. None of them had ever quite felt right, though he hadn't been able to articulate why until this exact moment, staring down a countdown he hadn't asked for. You've been quiet all morning, Imani said, finding him at his desk that afternoon, the folder from Woo Jin still open in front of him. There's a story circulating, he said, about the family. It mentions you, without a name yet, but Woo Jin thinks that won't last. How do you feel about that? Rushed, Taehyun admitted. Not toward you. Toward a decision I've already made, that I don't want to feel forced into announcing on anyone's timeline but our own. He looked up at her. I need a few more days. Can you trust me with that, even without knowing exactly why? I've trusted you with considerably larger uncertainties than a few days, Imani said. I think I can manage this one. Imani found out about the article from her mother, which had become, she reflected wryly, something of a pattern in this relationship. Diane, calling with the specific, careful worry of a parent who'd stumbled onto something online before her daughter had the chance to explain it first. "There's a blog post," Diane said, "about Taehyun's family. It mentions a woman. Baby, is that you?" "Probably," Imani said, closing her eyes briefly. "I haven't seen it yet." "It's not ugly," Diane said. "If that's what you're bracing for. It's actually kind, about the whole family, the apology to that old teacher, all of it. But it wants to know who you are, and I imagine other people are going to want to know too, now that it's out there." Imani read the article that evening, sitting at the kitchen table with Taehyun beside her, the two of them working through the specific unfamiliar territory of managing outside attention for the first time as an actual couple instead of a private arrangement. "It's not bad," she said, setting down her phone, "considering what it could have been." "It's not bad yet," Taehyun said. "That's different from not becoming something considerably more invasive once your name attaches to it." "What do you want to do?" "I want to protect the parts of this that are still ours," Taehyun said, "for as long as I can manage it. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know I don't want the next thing that happens between us to happen because we felt rushed by a story neither of us wrote." Imani studied him for a moment, something knowing crossing her face that she hadn't planned on revealing yet. "Is there a specific thing you're worried about rushing?" Taehyun went still, the specific stillness of a man wondering exactly how much his expression had already given away. "Why do you ask it like that?" "No reason," Imani said, entirely too casually, though something warm was building behind her carefully neutral expression. "Just curious, what you're actually protecting." "You're doing that thing again," Taehyun said, "where you ask a question like you already know the answer, and you're just waiting to see if I'll say it out loud." "Maybe I am," Imani said, unable to keep the smile fully contained anymore. "I've gotten pretty good at reading you over the past several months. It's a useful skill, dating a man who used to negotiate international shipping contracts for a living and still occasionally forgets he's terrible at hiding things from the person who actually pays attention." "I'm not terrible at it," Taehyun protested, though the protest itself carried very little conviction. "You are," Imani said gently. "You've been unusually careful with your coat for about 2 weeks now. You check your pocket before you take it off, every single time, like you're making sure something's still there. I noticed the pattern a while ago. I decided not to say anything because I figured you'd get there in your own time, and I didn't want to rush whatever you were building toward." Taehyun exhaled, something between amusement and mild embarrassment crossing his face. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to have opinions about locations," Imani said, teasing now. "For what it's worth, wherever you're planning, I trust it'll mean something. You've never once done anything with me that didn't." "I'm not confirming anything," Taehyun said, though his expression had already confirmed everything several sentences earlier. "I wouldn't dream of asking you to," Imani said. "I just wanted you to know that whatever timeline you're working with, blog post or no blog post, I'm not going anywhere in the meantime. Take the time you need. I've got nowhere else I'd rather be waiting." A blog post just put their private life on a countdown clock. Like and subscribe to help us grow, so we can create more content like this. If you're already nervous about what happens if the story breaks before he's ready, this one's got real stakes now. Stay close. Sang-hoon called a family meeting the following evening, a departure from his usual method of handling business complications alone, the specific inclusion itself telling Taehyun something about how far his father had actually traveled over the past several months. "I've spoken with Priya's counterpart in our own communications office," Sang-hoon said, referencing a contact Taehyun hadn't realized his father maintained. "We can request the outlet hold further coverage voluntarily, citing privacy concerns for a private citizen. It's not a guarantee, but it buys time, and it signals that the family takes the request seriously, rather than simply hoping the story dies on its own." "Would they actually honor that?" Imani asked. "Most outlets like this one operate on relationships," Sang-hoon said. "They cover families like ours because access matters to them long-term more than any single story does. A reasonable request, handled respectfully, tends to be honored, not out of kindness, but out of self-interest." I've learned to work within that reality, rather than fighting it. I appreciate you doing this, Imani said. I want to be honest, though. I don't need to be protected from my own life. If this becomes public eventually, I can handle it. I've handled worse with less warning. I know you can, Sang-hoon said, something genuine in his tone. This isn't about doubting your capacity to handle exposure. It's about respecting that some things deserve privacy, simply because privacy makes them more meaningful, not because either of you is incapable of surviving without it. Mi-suk, who had been quiet through most of the exchange, finally spoke. Let us do this one thing, she said to Imani. Not because you need saving, because we finally have something worth protecting as a family, and I would like the chance to actually practice protecting it, instead of watching from the sidelines the way I did for most of my marriage. Imani looked between the three of them, a family that had spent the better part of a year learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to choose honesty and protection over control and image, and felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't expected to feel this early into knowing them. Okay, she said. Do what you need to do. I trust you. After the meeting, Mi-suk found Imani alone in the kitchen, refilling water glasses, the specific quiet errand giving them a moment neither of the men had thought to claim first. Can I tell you something? Mi-suk said. That I haven't said to you directly yet? Of course. I spent 29 years watching my son date women I never once worried about protecting, Mi-suk said, not because they didn't deserve protection, but because none of them ever felt like they were actually staying. You feel different. I don't know how to explain it beyond that. Some instinct in me simply recognizes that you're not passing through this family. You're becoming part of it, and part of me has been waiting to feel that recognition for longer than I let myself admit. That means more to me than you probably realize, Imani said. I grew up watching my mother be the person everyone else's family leaned on, without much of that generosity coming back toward her in kind. I think some part of me has been quietly bracing, this whole time, for the moment your family's warmth turned out to be conditional the same way. It's a strange kind of relief, realizing it isn't. It isn't, Mi-suk confirmed. Not anymore. I don't know exactly when it stopped being conditional. I think it happened gradually, somewhere between the kitchen table and the dinner, where my husband finally apologized to his own son. But I know it's not conditional now, and I wanted you to hear that directly from me, not just infer it from how we're all behaving. Imani set down the pitcher she'd been holding, something emotional crossing her face that she didn't bother hiding. Thank you, she said, for saying that out loud. I don't think I realized how much I needed to hear it until you actually said it. Families should say the important things out loud, Mi-suk said. I spent too many years in this house learning the opposite lesson. I don't intend to keep teaching it to the next generation. The hold request worked, at least temporarily, the specific quiet relief of a crisis deferred rather than resolved settling over the family by the end of the week, which gave Taehyun exactly the window he'd been waiting for, and considerably less time than he would have preferred to make it count. He chose the sidewalk outside the dry cleaners on Western Avenue, a decision that had taken him longer to settle on than almost anything else in the planning, weighing every more obviously romantic location against the specific, unglamorous corner where all of it had actually started. Why here? Imani asked, when he asked her to meet him there after work on a Thursday evening, the same time of week, almost the same hour, as the night she'd first crouched down with half a sandwich. Because everything real about us started on this exact stretch of sidewalk, Taehyun said, and I didn't want to ask you the most important question of my life, somewhere that erased where we actually came from. I didn't want a ballroom, or a rooftop, or anywhere designed to make the moment look a certain way for anyone who might be watching. I wanted the place that already knew the truth about us before either of us said it out loud. Imani looked around at the corner, the dry cleaner's sign, the same crack in the sidewalk she'd once watched him fold himself against, the specific unremarkable ordinariness of a place that had somehow held the entire weight of everything that followed. I've thought about this corner a lot, she admitted, more than I probably should have, for a stretch of sidewalk. So have I, Taehyun said. I drove past it once, a few months ago, without telling you. I sat in the car for almost 20 minutes, just looking at it. I think some part of me already knew, even then, that whatever I eventually decided to ask you, it had to happen here. Nowhere else would have carried the same weight. What did you feel, sitting there? Grateful, Taehyun said, without hesitation. Not for the 90 days themselves. Those were genuinely difficult, in ways I don't think I fully processed until long after they ended. Grateful that I picked this particular block, out of every block in this city, to sit down on when I decided to test something I didn't even fully understand I was testing. If I'd chosen a different street, a different night, I don't know that any of this happens. I think about that more than I probably should. I think about it too, Imani said. How close I came to just walking past you, the way I'd walked past that corner 100 times before, without really seeing anyone sitting there. I don't know what made that particular Thursday different. Maybe I was just paying more attention that week. Maybe it was nothing more complicated than being a few minutes less rushed than usual. Whatever it was, Taehyun said, I've spent every day since being grateful for it. He reached into his coat then, and something in the gesture, unhurried, deliberate, entirely without performance, told Imani, even before she saw what his hand was holding, exactly what was about to happen. He didn't kneel with any performance in it. No crowd gathered, no camera catching the angle. Just a man crouching down on the same patch of concrete where a woman had once crouched down in front of him with a sandwich and asked his name like the answer mattered. I spent 55 nights on this exact stretch of sidewalk, he said, invisible to almost everyone who passed. You were the only person who saw me. Not the name, not the money. None of that existed yet, as far as you knew. You saw a man who needed help, and you helped him, because that's simply who you are. All the way down, regardless of what it costs you, or what you get back. He opened the box. I don't want to spend the rest of my life without the person who taught me what it actually means to be seen. Imani Grant, will you marry me? He proposed on the exact sidewalk where she first found him. Like and subscribe to help us grow so we can create more content like this, if that full circle moment just got you right in the chest. We're almost at the end of this one. Stay close. Imani didn't answer right away, not because she was uncertain, but because the specific weight of the moment required, she felt, more than a reflexive yes. She wanted to actually feel it arrive before she said it out loud. Yes, she said finally. Her voice steadier than the tears gathering in her eyes suggested it might be. Yes, completely, without a single doubt left in me. He slid the ring onto her finger there on the sidewalk, the same corner where a stranger's kindness had first rearranged both their lives, and neither of them cared that the moment had no audience beyond the two of them and a dry cleaner's window reflecting the evening light. I have to ask, Imani said, laughing through the tears now. How long has that ring actually been in your coat pocket? 9 days, Taehyun admitted. I kept waiting for a moment that felt right, and then a blog post nearly forced my hand before I was ready, and I realized waiting for perfect was just another way of avoiding the actual leap. I found it, Imani said, by accident, reaching for your keys 4 days ago. Taehyun went still. You knew? I knew, Imani confirmed. I didn't say anything. I wanted you to have your moment, on your own timeline, exactly the way you needed it to happen. You let me plan an entire proposal you already knew was coming, Taehyun said, something between disbelief and pure affection crossing his face. I let you have this, Imani said, because I've spent this whole year learning that you deserve the chance to choose things on your own terms, after a lifetime of having so many of your choices made for you. This was yours to give. I wasn't going to take that away from you just because I already knew what was in the box. How did you manage to act surprised if you already knew? I wasn't acting, Imani said, something honest crossing her face. Knowing something was coming and actually feeling it arrive turned out to be two entirely different experiences. I've thought about this exact moment for 4 days, and none of my imagining came close to what it actually felt like. Watching you crouch down on this exact spot and say all of that out loud. He kissed her then, unhurried, the specific ordinary sidewalk beneath them, somehow feeling like the most significant ground either of them had ever stood on. A woman passing with grocery bags slowed slightly, smiling at the two of them without breaking stride. However long it takes, Taehyun said, echoing words that had carried them through nearly everything since that first sandwich. I'd choose this exact corner again, every single time. So would I, Imani said. Every single time. They stood there for a long while after, neither in any hurry to leave the spot that had somehow held the entire arc of everything between them. We should probably eventually walk somewhere that isn't a sidewalk, Imani said eventually, laughing. Eventually, Taehyun agreed. Though I'm in no particular hurry. Woo Jin's phone buzzed early the next morning, the message from Priya's communications counterpart, considerably more urgent than the polite hold request they'd secured days earlier. The engagement's already circulating. Someone photographed them last night from across the street, not the proposal itself, but the moment right after, her hand raised, the ring visible. It's moving fast. We need a statement strategy by end of day, or the story writes itself without our input. Woo Jin read the message twice before calling Taehyun directly. They're engaged less than 12 hours and it's already public, Woo Jin said, without preamble. Not the way we controlled. Someone caught the aftermath from across the street. Your father's communications team needs direction by this afternoon on how much of the actual story you want told, versus how much gets filled in by strangers guessing at it. Taehyun sat with that for a moment, glancing at Imani beside him, still wearing the ring, still glowing with something neither of them had fully processed yet in the rush of the previous night. How bad is it actually? Imani asked, reading his expression. Not bad, Taehyun said. Just faster than either of us planned for, though I suppose that's fitting, given how little of this relationship has ever gone according to a plan either of us actually made in advance. There's a photo circulating, not the proposal itself, just the moment right after, your hand in the air, the ring visible. Someone across the street caught it without us noticing. He handed her his phone, the image already pulled up. Imani studied the photo for a long moment. Grainy, distant, but unmistakably the two of them on that same sidewalk, her hand raised, his arms still around her. It's actually kind of beautiful, she said, surprising herself with the observation. Considering neither of us knew it was being taken. It is, Taehyun agreed. That doesn't make the timing any less complicated. Woo Jin needs direction on how we want to handle this, and I don't think there's a version of doing nothing that actually works anymore. Tell them we'll give an actual interview, Imani said, before he'd finished forming the question himself. Not because we owe anyone an explanation. Because if people are going to know about this regardless, I'd rather it be our version of the story, instead of whatever gets stitched together from a blurry photograph and second-hand guessing. That's exactly what I was thinking, Taehyun said, something warm crossing his face. He looked back at his phone, still connected to Woo Jin on the other end. Tell them we're not hiding, he said into it. We'll give an actual interview, on our own terms. If people are going to know about this, I'd rather they know the truth. Of course you did, Imani said, laughing. We really do think alike, don't we? More every day, Taehyun said, reaching for her hand, the ring catching the morning light between them. I suspect that's only going to keep happening, the longer we do this. I'm counting on it, Imani said. Every day, for as long as we've got. Woo Jin, still on the line, cleared his throat. I'll relay that to the communications team, he said. Though I should tell you both. An actual interview means an actual timeline. Once we announce we're doing this on our own terms, the outlet's going to want it fast, before other publications catch up with their own version. We're likely looking at days, not weeks. Days works, Taehyun said, glancing at Imani, who nodded without hesitation. I'd rather move fast on our terms than slow on someone else's. I'll set it up, Woo Jin said. Congratulations, by the way. I should have said that before diving straight into crisis management. 11 years working for this family, and I don't think I've ever seen you this settled about anything. Thank you, Woo Jin, Taehyun said. For all of it. The watch, the 90 days, all the ways you protected me even when I asked you not to. None of this happens without you standing at the edge of it, making sure I didn't fall too far. That's the job, Woo Jin said, something almost embarrassed in his usually composed voice. Go celebrate. I'll handle the rest. He hung up before either of them could really respond further, and Taehyun set the phone down gently on the kitchen counter. Something settled and finally complete, arriving in the quiet, after a morning that had started with crisis and ended, somehow, exactly where it needed to. They're engaged, and the whole world just found out before either of them was ready. Comment if you think going public with their story is the right call, or if it opens a door they can't close again. Part 7 is coming.